Mo, can I call you Mo?
Yeah, you can call me Mo. Go with it.
Do you go by acronym at all, like your initials at all? Is,
No, just I think just Mo is easiest, and I don't have a lot of other friends that are named Mo, so it's actually pretty convenient. And yeah, also on at work I just go by Köppen Castro Blucher, so it's also shorter, but it's still a mouthful.
yeah, but you really interesting background. I just scanned through it after you sent me your LinkedIn, and so I mean, tell me about yourself. You actually, what did you do? Undergrad in Miami, then grad work overseas. Is that right?
Yeah, so actually, so my family is German, but they moved to Hawaii. My dad did his PhD in Hawaii, and they lived there for 15 years, and that's where my brother and I were born. And after that, when I was 2 years old, I moved back to Germany. So I spent most of my childhood in Germany. But then for high school, we moved back to Hawaii, and my family started a gelato business called Il Gelato. And that was really my first taste of entrepreneurship, seeing my parents start this ice cream chain. And it started just with the three of us, and we had a helper. And now they have six, seven stores. They serve more than 80 restaurants and hotels in Hawaii.
Wow.
And it's really cool to see how they've grown this little mom and pop shop into now close to 100 people that work at Il Gelato and make and serve ice cream. And I always loved Hawaii. However, I wanted to kind of see more of the world, and you kind of get island fever if you live a long time on an island.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided I wanted to go to the mainland and study there. So I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering in Miami, and then I moved to Germany to do my grad degree, and I did medical device engineering. There was a mix of a few different things. I did a bunch of internships in college, and I realized that I kind of want to apply all of the knowledge that I have with engineering and math and sciences and find that intersection. And that's really what drew me to engineering. But then I realized like medical engineering is really awesome because you get to help people, and just being more mission driven there was awesome. So I did that in Germany. During that time, I did a bit of in between undergrad and grad school. I did a bit of traveling in India and Southeast Asia. And during one of those trips, I met a person that I ended up working for later on. And that's a close friend now and mentor. And I worked in VC then for 5 years after grad school. So I didn't end up becoming an engineer, but I ended up working more on the startup side of things and being involved anywhere from deal sourcing to fundraising to stepping in with a few of the startups and helping them with growth strategy, with product management, and all sorts of other things. And then working as chief of staff for the family office for one of the general partners of the venture fund and helping out wherever I was needed. And that was really, really awesome just because I got to touch a bunch of different projects, got to work with founders, got to work with entrepreneurs, investors, and really feed my curiosity. And after doing this for a few years, I also wanted to be a bit more hands-on. So going a bit from being a super generalist to really feeling like I make a bigger impact. And that's when it drew me back to the startup world. And I took a job at a YC startup as a chief of staff, just as a generalist, doing all sorts of things, operations, finance, recruiting. And now I work, as you already mentioned in the intro, I work for a company called Tara Connect. And what we do is we do internet connectivity with laser beams. And this is really like, think of it like fiber, but you can send fiber through the air without having to lay fiber optics in the ground. And this is a Google X spinout. So this was a moonshot that graduated earlier this year. And in March, we spun out, and now we're an independent company. And we're really like one of the leaders or the leader in photonics. And we help really drive the engine of and the science and the technology of photonics. And photonics is really the science of how do you modulate light and how do you bring light on top of a chip so that you can so now we have a module that can do lights beam steering. So that's called optical phase array, where you can now have a bunch of different tiny little light modules on a chip. And if you have the right phase array, you can then steer it very, very precisely over long distances. So we have a product that can do high bandwidth connectivity, 10 gigabytes upward, up to 20 gigabytes per second, over 10 to 20 kilometers or even miles.
So your background is just hugely diverse. There's so many things we talk about, walk through.
Yeah, no, I don't know where you want to dive in. Sorry,
No,
this was a little bit longer intro, but
no, that's great. No, in fact,
yeah.
it's wonderful. But you also I thought you actually had a podcast, but you actually have a YouTube channel. So what do you do on that?
Yeah, so I just do that on the side. And this is a side project. It started off with people asking me for advice on venture capital a few years ago. And then on AI, as AI came out, I was a heavy user of early ChatGPT when it was not cool, or it was still like very bad, but playing around with the early versions of ChatGPT and large language models. And I had a bunch of friends that would ask me, hey, how do you do this? Or what do you do to be productive? Or, hey, you manage so many different portfolio companies. How do you stay organized? And I just saw the YouTube channel as a fun challenge to like share some of this in a bigger way instead of just me telling each person individually and setting time aside for each of those friends. I saw the same questions over and over again. And because of that, I ended up just making videos about that. And I just do that on the side. It's and I share kind of like cool technologies and products that I work on, and it's fun.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun to see kind of like what videos do well and which ones don't, and getting now in touch with a few of the companies that I've covered before, and now doing partnerships with them and getting early access to tools is really exciting. Just to see that really where my mind shift switched was really seeing that even the big companies, maybe not the ChatGPTs and the Claudes of the world, but even the secondary companies like Perplexity and even Google, like they all still work in advertising. They still try to get in front of people. And even though everyone is using already Google, there's still a gap in communication of how do you share what these tools are capable of. And I think even ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of them, I think there's still so many opportunities and applications that are untapped. And I kind of want to dive a little bit into your use cases of how you use these large language models. But to me, this was really a driver and shift in perspective of realizing that distribution is really valuable, and being able to tell a story of how you use a tool or how you're more productive. It's like a game where you kind of figure out what is my pain point and how can I convey that in the simplest terms to someone else that hasn't coded before or that hasn't done prompt engineering like in depth for years.
Well, so let's see. So let's rewind a bit and go back to your first gig. I'm actually probably even dated before the tech gig. You probably worked at the yogurt place for a while, right?
Gelato. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was really my first gig. I was in ninth grade and just already like learning how to do everything from talking to restaurant owners, convincing them to sell our gelato, all the way to scooping gelato to customers.
Yeah, boy, that was calling it. Yeah, frozen yogurt place was bad. Sorry.
I'll get it.
That's terrible. But then,
no, you'll see that any like Italians or anyone that like has a gelato shop, we're very particular on gelato. It's different from ice cream. It's different from frozen yogurt. But no, I like all frozen desserts.
No, that's hands-on in a lot of ways, right? But then getting in your first sort of tech startup, was that Silicon Valley? Where was that?
Yeah, so that was actually, so I would say I always wanted to move to Silicon Valley, not only for the beautiful nature, but also to just be around people that build cool things and do great stuff. And I always had the dream of founding my own company and building something. And this really comes out of my drive for curiosity and kind of building stuff and tinkering. But I actually ended up building a language translation tool that took raw video input and then outputted the same video by translating it. And that was actually something that me and my good friend and my co-founder, we worked on that for half a year and we built some really cool technology. But unfortunately, during the same time, there was some really fierce competition because many other people realized, hey, you can build this kind of stuff now with different libraries and packages. So we ended up discontinuing that. But that was really my first sense of being involved in a startup and building something from scratch.
And then so when it was Y Combinator later, or was within Y Combinator?
Yeah, that was after that, and that was a startup. They do circuit board design software and have a website that has a library of circuit board design stuff. So that was later then.
Did you work at the time there, or I kind of finally threw it right in the incubator? But was Sam Altman running it at that time?
So I wasn't in Y Combinator. This was a Y Combinator company. It was a class of, I think, YC 15 or 14 or 16. So they had been around for quite some time, and they weren't as tucked into the Y Combinator ecosystem where Y Combinator pumps out hundreds of startups every year. But they have the network, and it was cool to kind of see what it's like to be part of a Y Combinator company.
Yeah, it's so I've worked with some Y Combinator folks before, actually some clients, and it's almost analogous to sort of the Google strategy. It seemed to me that they sort of give you opportunity and see if you can fly, but kind of leave you on your own. And if you can't, they're just done. Is that right? Do they kind of back off or they keep reinvesting and bringing you to the next level if there's opportunity? I just don't know the model.
Yeah, so it really depends. They have an active investment team, and they evaluate if they do follow on and follow up investments. But we were at a point where that Y Combinator startup that I was working at, they had mostly other funding outside of Y Combinator.
Gotcha. Oh, I see. And then,
so to answer your question, I did not meet Sam Altman, unfortunately.
No, I was just wondering how you got early access to ChatGPT and OpenAI stuff. Wasn't through that network, or it was?
No, I just learned about it fairly early on, and just a lot of their stuff was already open at that point. I didn't have like access to GPT-1 or 2, but like really early on, just as they released some of the public-facing interfaces and the APIs. So just like reading about it on, I think, a TechCrunch article or something, and being curious about it and wondering how good is it actually. And then like you probably had the same experience where you tried out and you're like, wow, this is impressive for the time, especially. And now we're just mind numb. Like if we now go back and try ChatGPT 3 or anything before that, it kind of feels really, really bad. But back then I remember just trying it out and being blown away by the capabilities and already asking myself, what could be done with this? What was your first exposure to large language models and kind of trying them out? And what was your impression of that?
Well, yeah, so I ChatGPT, but not an early adopter the way you were. I did get into Claude fairly early, or Anthropic's Claude. And, when I started to code off of it, I really noticed the power of it. But I was literally prompting it with English and then taking the code excerpts off the web interface and pasting in the code and still kind of doing my own thing. And I remember one of my pals said, you got to use these IDEs, this integrated development environment, because it can basically edit files directly. And I go, I like to be involved in it, right? Boy, that ended really quickly as soon as Claude Code came out, because now it's the point that all the programs I do, I have Codex running with OpenAI. I have Claude Code. I put these Claude Codes in dangerous mode. Codex, I'm approval 100%. I'm sick of hitting going through, yes, just do it. And then my favorite is Droid. I don't know if I mentioned that to you. Factory AI. And that's really good. Some Princeton guys put that one together. I think they all kind of pull off of Claude models and stuff. But I literally have 3 different terminal sessions going with them all running, doing different things. And like I'm right now walking on my treadmill using Whisper, because it's tough to type when you're walking. And I do the voice to text. And I literally just code verbally at this point through natural language. And so, I've gone just way off the deep end of this stuff. So I went from 0 to like light speed on this stuff pretty quickly, just because I have an appreciation for how they work, because I did my early doctorate work in neural networks. And transformers to me aren't that big of a deal, right? So, I kind of understand how they work. So at this point, I just say, you know what, I'm fine black boxing it and going with it, right? And some people are still kind of wanting to get their hands in there, and they use Cursor and they want to see their code. I don't need to do that anymore. So I don't know. Do you do that level? Or you're kind of more on the business side anyway, or are you actually doing coding from a technical perspective?
Yeah, no, any of my developer friends that have like a CS degree, they would scold me because I'm not a developer, but I know how to use those things. I know how to use Cursor. I know how to use, I still use Visual Studio Code and different extensions within that. I know how to recode, but it takes me way longer than any other developer to kind of identify bugs. But I think that's the beauty of where we are right now, where people like you and I, we're not technically trained as developers. We can, as long as we understand at least the basics of how code works, how library works, how import export works, how to call on different functions and stuff like that, you can have ChatGPT or Claude do all the work, and we just adjust things. And if there is a bug, we have either the LLM figure it out, or we actually go in there ourselves and troubleshoot things. So yeah, long story short is, I agree with you. I feel like Codex is the way to go for non-technical people like us. I still think for really complex environments, if you go and need to be production ready, you need to write unit tests, you need to make sure that the load on different servers needs to be optimized. I'm not sure if we're quite there yet where Claude and all of that can troubleshoot 100%, but I think we're at the point where it's like maybe 99% or 98%. And that last little bit still requires human input, I think. And seeing the code still helps. But the way that you're doing it with Claude projects like, or with Codex, you can still do that, right? You can still hook up your IDE and check it out.
Well, and so, I mean, when you say like us, I did formal software engineering. I've been coding.
Okay, so okay, never mind. So you're laughing at me because I'm not the technical trained.
So I just kind of laughed at it because, I mean, look, I'm not trying to be arrogant about it, but I'm actually fine just relinquishing control, because at the end of the day, I could actually get into the code and fix it if I need to. I just don't want to, because there's so many more interesting things to do. And I think where software development engineering disciplines need to move towards is design, knowing what to build and just saying what you want and backing off and let it happen, let the magic happen, because there's so many cool things that can be done. And every day I find something new. Like I literally, just do a quick share screen if I can really briefly. It's like, this is really, really cool to give you an idea of how powerful. Let's see, share screen. Here. Share. So you see this is my statistics of my AI Steve, right? And so I'm just building this like simple interface to pull off all the different content sources. And then I said, you know what? I want to interface my Apple Health. Did that switch for you? Did you see a different screen now?
Yeah, I see that. That's awesome.
So literally, this is like showing correlation matrix heat map style from all the different metrics. I try to optimize sleep, so I up here my red sleep area. And then I said, you know, let's do a running window of 14 days and just see how it changes over time. And so that's pretty cool. And then some other things like, what are the top features using a random forest here? You know, that when like stand time is highly correlated, which that's pretty cool. Lag time, some various metrics. And so I'll stop sharing. This
is fascinating. Keep showing. I love to see it. This is hyper complex. This is next level stuff.
Well, I mean, so actually, just to the point, I literally did this all this morning. I woke up and I said, yeah, I want to interface my Apple Health. And I said, I want to have a heat map. I gave an example because I did this once before. I wanted to be able to put it in a simple interface, and it's a part of my AI Steve system. Let's go to the very end of it. And like I said, I didn't need to get into the guts of first how to even access Apple Health. I mean, I'm on a Mac, but then all the heat map stuff, I could do this, but I just told it generically what to do. And then, I should say, like a couple weeks ago, I did an image analysis side of things. Here, I'll just scan through some images. All my different images I have from my Mac Mail. This is an example of one of my bands. We were actually on KUSA TV years ago. And so I don't know if you notice what I did is I took an image and I just did a quick similarity search of the images across all my Mac photos. And so, first of all, just doing image similarity, pretty cool, right? But then second is, I can even do face stuff. You have to take a simple face here and a face search here. Do a search by face. And I find, this lady is actually, look, there she is. It zooms in. But in the same, I can do face searches. And so like, again, this was like a day project. I just walked through the things that I wanted to do with some basic clustering, big cat family. So everything's cats. It's different cats are clustered. I mean, I just said, go ahead and cluster. And then of course the AI Steve stuff that I was just describing before. This is this is my prompt, but this is my things you and I should perhaps talk about as a response. It's a little chat interface. And I think I was telling you I had the infrastructure in scientific computing and the idea of transmitting voice clones.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, that's just kind of stuff. This is just a hobby project, but I'm pulling all these different content sources on my Mac. Everything you can imagine that you live your life by, you know, right? Email, iMessage, or a text. You might be an Android person. A photo.
No, I'm a big Mac fan.
Oh, are you? So basically, every content source gets pulled in, sucked into this database system that's for my retrieval augmented generative AI stuff. And then I, effectively compose large prompts and then do some LLM wrapping, but it's all the contents locally for me. Everything I've just showed you was 100% natural language coded by me just saying what I wanted. And the AI Steve, I built in a weekend, and I've tweaked it since. The Image Explorer was like less than a day project.
Yeah.
All that stuff. In terms of speed, I mean, I could code that stuff, but it would be months. And it's just so fun to just do this. And some people call that vibe coding. I don't. I just say it's like the next generation of coding. So I'm expecting more developers like me can do more hobby things like this. And the notion of being a solopreneur to me is really the future. And so when you were talking, I kind of envisioned, you're probably with teams of people and you're the people business kind of mindset and make technical enough, but then you also have some technical team. My guess is moving forward, you need much less of that technical team. And it's just a guy like you that can build that company you wanted to found from the beginning. So, do you feel enabled today that you could do that? Or you still want to have a fairly large team?
No, totally. And I feel like I'm switching more and more towards having worked at multiple different companies, and having worked with a lot of entrepreneurs from very small, nimble, agile startups all the way to very large teams.
Yeah.
I feel like the complexity that you're working on, you totally get enabled. I feel like the idea of a 10x engineer or 100x engineer is completely true, where you can now have a person that just does a lot of the stuff, like yourself here. Like, this looks super impressive. And just 5 or 10 years ago, this would have taken a team of really smart engineers, probably weeks, if not months.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you're right. I think on the technical side, it's totally enabled. On the business side, the same thing happens. I think with content creation, you can totally, like, I can create a video or two a week and just do that as a side project on the weekends. And I have a little one. So like being able to just spend an hour or two and create a high quality or higher quality video than I was able to do before, just because the research, the experimentation, the content topics, being able to coordinate teams. I'm still using an editor, and I'm still using a team of people that support me in ways where AI can't yet fully. And I think as long as you have the right systems in place, you can totally start a company on your own, solopreneur. I still think having help and expertise and outside opinions is still valuable. You can rely fully on, you could rely fully on LLMs, but at the same time, talking to someone or having someone that has already done, for example, performance marketing. This is something that I haven't really done too much of. And I understand how to tell a story, and I understand the customer needs. I understand how to make it into a business model, how to price it, all that things. But like when it comes to the nitty gritty of Google ads or Facebook ads, I'd still I still would favor kind of talking to a person that is like, has done this before. So I feel like in a sense, you can totally be a solopreneur and just work with other people that are subject matter experts. I think that's the way to go. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years, we see the first billion-dollar company that is solo founded, and probably a team of less than 5 people.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot sooner than 5 years. Seriously. But your skill set is so important because you're a people person, and you know how to interface with people, and that's where a lot of technical people break down. They don't. So again, this comes back to the point, knowing what to build, where the market fit is. So I think there are going to be, yes, a ton of solopreneurs just building products, but often in vacuum. And where it's going to be the billionaire, a solopreneur, is where they've interfaced well with initially their peer groups, maybe around a university, kind of like how Facebook and Google and others, the big ones, blew up. But then just iterate quickly to find that product or service that just virally explodes. But again,
Totally.
it's the iteration that's important, the fail fast, the succeed even quicker kind of thing. And that's what I think these tools enable.
Yeah, and I think ideas are cheap, and this is not my idea, but I think ideas are cheap. Execution is everything, especially right now. I think we're at a point where you and I, we could both, if someone gives us an idea, like the other day, someone said like, oh, I want a better like headshot photo of myself.
Right.
And I'm using Gemini Nano Banana Pro for this. And I'm thinking to myself, and I make them the video with Gemini. I make them a cool like Facebook profile picture. And they're like, wow, this looks exactly like me. But then I'm thinking like, what if you just custom build an application that does that for you? And I was able to just put that together in 30 minutes. And I put a fully functioning website that has the integrations to Nano Banana Pro, and I was able to launch it, right? So that is like so easy now. So the idea was simple, nothing revolutionary. There's tons of apps out there like that. But then I just wanted to see, could I just build this? And I was able to spin that up fairly quickly and have this functioning thing now. But now here's the key question is, how do you monetize that? How do you get people to learn about this tool? And there's multiple ways of doing that. Like you could just pump ads out, but there's other ways of doing that in a more lean way that is a little bit more organic, where you get more customer feedback, where you see what works, what doesn't work. And I think that's really that's what I said earlier with distribution is king these days, is being able to sell something to people and get it in front of a lot of people, telling a story, making it engaging, making it easy to use. All those things I think take skill, and it takes a real product person, which I'm still learning so much. So I wouldn't call myself a product expert, but I like to learn more on that, and kind of always I'm curious how people use things and why they use them. And I usually start with myself, and I'm asking myself every single time I use a tool, I'm asking myself, why am I using this over the other tool? And then how do I simplify that? How do I simplify that thought? Why is it, for example, I want to ask you, let's maybe do that as an experiment right now.
Sure.
Within your tech stack, let's start with a super simple question. What is your favorite LLM? What do you use for which use case?
Oh, wow. Like I said, I wrap it around the tool. So if it's with Claude, it's a version of Sonnet.
Okay.
The model is. If it's Codex, honestly, I don't even pay attention. I give an opportunity to upgrade to, or we want to use a new model, and say, yeah. And so I don't really pay attention to as much the model. I pay attention more to how it's expediting what I'm trying to do. And if I find that something's getting me in a rut a lot, and frankly, I found Gemini CLI was doing that. It was too generic. It wasn't giving me enough control to get into the various files. I was using less of it. But yeah, Codex gave me the approval all, and I'm like, I'm all over that. And Claude is the dangerous mode. And Droid doesn't, I think occasionally will ask, do you want to delete these files? But other than that, I'm just saying, go to it. And so it's ironic because I don't look as much in the details under the hood, even in the models, as I look to see how quickly I can achieve. Just the Apple Health integration stuff was pretty cool to do as quickly as I did. And so I guess when it comes down to, for me, I've always lived by the mantra, necessity is the mother of invention. And I'm one, because I'm a little older and a little more established, if I can buy something for what I need, I'm going to do that. Right? That would be my first choice. But if there's something that I want or need and it's not commercially available, I'm like, crap, I got to invent it or build it because I still have that need. And so what to build for me is largely what I want to be doing for myself. And if other people find it useful, then I will think about distributing it. So I've asked the question, I did my AI dad first, which got me my AI Steve. That was because my dad passed recently. And I was really angry with him, but because he left this nasty estate. But I just took all these emails and built up this AI system. I still used LLMs like Sonnet and others, but my own RAG, my own retrieval piece to do the semantic and keyword type searches across the content. But I found that by doing this, it was therapeutic. And I became less angry. I got through that stage of grief really quickly. Relatively quickly. But I thought, wow, I bet you there are other people who would find it to be useful to have an infrastructure to use to ask questions of a past loved one that they just don't remember how they respond, but that might help them get to a grieving period. So I started asking people, would they find this to be useful? And I'd say 3 or 4 people right off the bat said, yeah, just make it available. And so one of the reasons for me doing the AI Steve, I wanted to get that in a less specific mode with my dad to be a little more generic. And then when I have a very simple to simply download on your system and you use your own content, then I'll just make it available for free, just like, Linus did with Linux. And if it takes off, great. Eventually people will probably say, hey, we could use your help to leverage this or service it. We'll pay you to do that. I'm not doing it for the purpose of trying to make money. So that's kind of my drive on it. But I don't know. I mean, as an entrepreneur, do you think that way? Or are you thinking more because you're still younger, you have a little one, you think about college and the future of them, that you want to build this infrastructure? Well, what's your thinking? What's your approach to this?
No, I love that. I think that's a beautiful approach. And I feel like more people should build for the purpose of building. To me, I operate in multiple different modes. Like for the YouTube thing, that was completely just out of curiosity and just sharing the limited knowledge that I have with people and the limited expertise. And just because I love creating content, like telling a story and putting videos together, it's just really innately interesting to me. So I think that's where I started. And then it turns into something that you could monetize in certain ways.
Yeah.
With building, so far, like I started the language translation video startup, the dubbing tool. It was called Content Up. That was with both the need in mind, because I noticed that there's a lot of creators that make YouTube videos, or a lot of my friends in Hawaii that have a successful following, but they're only capturing maybe 800 million people that speak English as their first language. I realized like you could just multiply their reach. They're already creating the content. So it was more of that need, but also the idea that could be monetized and there's value that you create. So I think I build a lot of things just out of curiosity. But in terms of monetization, I think it's a very important measurement stick of how valuable is it. And there's a lot of things out there that are valuable and they're open source. But I also think that innately you need to make some money and make a living. And even if you do this as a solopreneur, you probably spend a lot of time on this. You spend a lot of tokens, credits. You spend a lot on tools, just like me, because we see the value in saving time and building better things faster. And I think that is innately the measurement stick of how much value you create for other people. And you can measure that with money. So I think understanding if this is monetizable is I think, an important step in product market fit. And I think this is maybe interesting for your AI Steve. There's so many things that are already turning in my head where I'm thinking, how could this be used, or why would people want this? And with the talking to a past, like a deceased person or someone that has passed away, I see that as a cool feature, but I don't see a lot of people at least, just doing that every single day and paying like a subscription for it. I see a few people. There's probably a few adopters that would be willing to spend a lot of money, especially people that have strong relationships with their relatives or anyone who passed away. But with your AI Steve, there's so many things where I'm already thinking that you're just turning a model that is already good. I'm not sure what you're using under the hood, but probably ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. And then you just custom train it. You're probably adding some sort of RAG model to it, so it has some memory, and you have some system prompts so that it understands the tone, the language. And I think that innately is super valuable to clone yourself. If you want to be more productive at work, you have some specialized functions. If you have something that, for example, for me, I'm currently working on the financial side and the strategy side of Tara, and have the model learn from your decisions and then just plugging that in, and not only to fact check yourself, but to make your work easier. And once you've done a few things a couple times, the LLMs are really good at picking up patterns and recreating stuff. So just automating the mundane. And I think this comes back to like workflow automation that everyone's talking about. And I'm not sure if you used N8N or Zapier or Make.com, like more low code tools. Your solution sounds like it's more evergreen and more applicable to all of these things. And I think open source is very noble, but I think it's also really easy to have it open source. Plus, maybe you could have like a hosting side of things where you provide it for free and people can do this on their own, or you can provide like a hosting solution where you say, if you don't want to like hook this up to your own Sonnet or whatever, or you don't want to store your own data, or you create even like a service business around like uploading the initial thing. If that's like really difficult and you don't have an automated flow for that, you could just say like, hey, like I have a team that makes that really easy, and you can use the tool with your own credits, with your own API tokens, but we'll handle the setup for $1,000 or $10,000, whatever it is. And if I was you, I would probably go to companies and be like, hey, like you're paying your financial analyst X amount, or you're paying your doctors this much. Why don't I just come in and I'll do this for your whole team, and I'll handle all of the upload, all of the documentations, all of that. And then I'll leave and you guys just use your own credits. Like you don't have to pay on an ongoing basis, but the initial setup is probably more, I don't know. I'm spitting ideas. I don't even know exactly how it works, but
Well, no, it's interesting.
It could be monetized.
You definitely have a mind for trying to monetize something. Maybe it's not even intending at this point to generate revenue. In my case,
Right.
what's pretty interesting is for me, being an AI guy, I've recognized years ago, content is king, right?
Yeah.
My AI dad got a very big boost because I had about 60,000 email exchanges that were largely question answer. I actually created something called a Socratic QA, and I'd extract sort of tonal response and what kinds of things would be responded to kinds of questions. And my father was a lawyer, and most all my questions were around law. So 2 decades worth of patent IP law discussion over a variety of different matters that he was billing out at one point like $1,500 an hour. So I get that kind of free right now. And so there's a good value to that because he built this intellectual property understanding in the context of a father and a son discussion where he never charged me, right? So now I have this AI dad, I could monetize that. But what I learned right away is that when I first had that static set of emails, it had good responses. But then I started to, when I send emails to people, I BCC my AI dad, and he will respond back to me often in real time. So I can even interject in my subsequent discussions, but it's learning post-mortem. And so that's just, I'm adding additional content. That's why I took to the next level with AI Steve. Every content source I use daily is being sucked into my system. And it's interesting. It's just like how when OpenAI took Amazon reviews and got sentiment understanding, they said, let's train on the world. Just like when Google in the early days, saw this page ranking thing would explode as soon as they downloaded the internet. The more content you have, it just suddenly you get this like quantum improvement. And so just that AI response, AI Steve to Mo, this is the first time I even hit it with something real. I gave a really big prompt to your LinkedIn. That's all I did. Copied your whole LinkedIn, even gave the URL and said, I'm having a podcast with Mo. What kind of things should we discuss? And boom, came out some huge, great topics. So I'm like, wow, this is already incredibly valuable. And it's the first time I ever really tried it because I've just been building it. But it's all a function of the fact that I've done all these different content sources being sucked in. So in terms of how these things might apply to others, everyone lives their lives as little content creators. Some do it for a living. Others they just do it with the family with verbal interactions. But I know everyone has a value with content coming in, and everyone will be very unique. So the key is just to have a platform that enables that, which is way different than just like a chatbot, right? It's like, what's personal for me? It's what Apple wanted to do with Apple Intelligence. They just didn't get there because these devices have everything in our lives. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing for me, just for fun.
And I think you're like really onto something. I think this is really where productivity is going in the long game. And if you had, like, when I mentioned a few timeframes earlier, you said it's probably sooner than that. I think over the years, like having, and it's not that many years, but even 2 years ago when I saw ChatGPT come out, I thought people would use it way more than people are using it right now. And I think everyone is working towards this like general assistant that just lives with you and lives in your pocket, but people haven't really adopted to it yet. And I think Apple dropped the ball on not being more ahead in the game because they have all the data. Like you said, you're using most of the stuff from Apple. You're using health data, you're using your photo data, you're using your emails, your chats, your messages.
Calendar too.
Calendar, pretty much anything that you use on your phone. We spend probably like the average screen time for people in my age group is probably like 10 hours, if not more.
Yeah.
Like all of that can be recorded. All of that is data. And not being able to use that effectively right now, I think that's the big bottleneck. And that's why I think this will be the future, but I still think it's going to be 5 years instead of 1 year, just because I see how relatively slow the adoption is for large language models, given that they're so useful. Do you know what I mean? I think they're so useful, but still, like if I talk to people on the street, they're not using it as much as you or me. And I think we're people that are early adopters, but at the same time, we're at a point right now where the average human should probably use it more than they are.
So this what blows me away, because you live in San Francisco area, right? But you live in Silicon Valley. Yeah. And so when you just talk to people on the street, they're all already pretty educated in this space. So you're not even in the Midwest or the flyover states, right? So it's a good point. And I think that's why the venture community's got over their skis with over-investing, because it's, if you're an engineer, you understand thermodynamics, you understand kinetics. Thermodynamics is it going to happen or not? Yes, it will. Kinetics is the speed with which it happens. And I think that VCs always anticipated happening faster than it will, just because people, unfortunately, don't adopt as quickly, because you and I live on the bleeding edge, and most people are not. They're more towards the laggard side of things. And so the speed of adoption is going to be somewhere in between what I think and somewhere what you think in the 5-year period. I think we're going to have a little bit of a correction on the AI world because I think they've overbuilt. But to see what I can do with my coding, man, anyone who sits behind a keyboard, period, whatever your life is, you sit behind a keyboard as a knowledge worker, if it takes 20 people, it's only going to take 1 to 2 now. That's how I look at it. So from a company perspective, I think Meta's and Alphabet, they're just going to be dumping people. And they'll be on the streets wondering, what should we do? I got it. I'll be a solopreneur. It's kind of, But anyway, it'll be interesting to see. And look, you have a little one. I mean, it's like under 1, right? Your baby?
Yeah.
Right. And so you and I lived through exciting times in the last, say, 20 years. What do you envision for your child right now? What's school going to look like? What do you think?
I think let me start back, take a step back. I think the key value that I want to instill in my little one is curiosity. I think it's really what's driven my entire life, is being curious and kind of figuring out how the world works and why does it work that way, and how can I either manipulate it or use it or contribute to that, and how do I help people with all these things that I learned. And I really want to instill that in him. And I think schools and universities they're not gonna go away. I think mainly they're a social organism and a daycare, especially early days. Schools are more of a daycare than really learning.
Yeah.
There's some prep schools that are different, but I think mainly the organism and the social organism behind them is more of a structured daycare. And I think that is really important to human development, really having other people to interact with. And I think that's the first thing. I think when it comes to learning, being able to use the tools is going to be more essential than ever. It's for me, it was learning how to use the internet. And now learning how the internet is a gateway drug into learning how to use LLMs, and just because you can teach yourself anything.
All right.
And I think people that are curious are going to be the ones, no matter what socioeconomic lever or place you come from, I think you are able to start your own business. If you have a little bit of brain, the curiosity, and a bit of time to kind of learn these things and implement them, and the willingness to fail. I think having the courage to try something and pushing it out there in the world, either making content about it or just putting it on GitHub and like open sourcing it. I think having that courage, the curiosity, and a bit of grit, being able to persevere through the hard times when you have to debug your code when it's not working on the first prompt, I think that makes us really important. And if that works out, I'm not worried that my little one is going to be out of a job, because humans have basic desires, and I think the jobs will evolve, but it will be more tailored towards, it can be more tailored towards people's interests. If you're really interested into sports or into, I don't know, the history of Japan, I think there are ways to now monetize these things with building your own business around that, educating people through content, or building tools to help other people learn about that. And I think that's a super exciting time to be alive. And a lot of people are gloomy that AI is kind of taking away education. And there is a certain sense to that, but I'm more of an optimist, and I'm looking more at the capabilities that are now possible for our kids that have never been possible before. And that's just crazy exciting. And I think for anyone that's curious, all of the traits that I mentioned before, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. So the curiosity component, and I think formal education a lot of times will squash that down unless you have just such huge amount of curiosity. You break through it, you tolerate the coursework. One of the things that I recognized getting my advanced degree was I had to be self-teaching. I had to learn whole new disciplines. I had to build tools in order to answer my own questions. And you don't get taught that. It's more like, this is a pathway. These are your arithmetic tables in order to learn math. Math is a means to an end to me, and I just tolerate it. But if you remove that sort of box, forces people down certain pathways, basically a track. You have to be on a track in the educational system of yesteryear. Now with these AI tools, it's like limitless. So the key is to try to encourage, and that's the question. Can you use the tools to encourage a curiosity, or is it better to not have them on those tools, to just foster curiosity and then engage them on those tools?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. And I don't have the answer for that, because if I was a kid in middle school or in high school and I had the shortcut to write an essay or just use ChatGPT to do it for me, I would probably also choose ChatGPT. But I think there's value in doing the hard things and learning the basics, because everything that you're doing, I think 99.999% of other people wouldn't be able to build AI Steve, even though they have the same tools available to them. And that's because of your background. That's because you aren't afraid to fail. That's because you aren't afraid to get your hands dirty and try things out. And also your degree in computer science, I think is a huge leg up.
It's chemistry and computer science, but the notion of a random forest, a lot of people don't even know what that means. I'm like,
right,
use a random forest to pick the appropriate variables for me to look at for my sleep. Just that phrase is not something that most people are going to utter.
Right. Or like when you build like your health matrix, like most people probably don't know what a matrix even is. And I think that's where like having a solid background and knowing the fundamentals is immensely helpful to cross-apply it across disciplines. Like take something from chemistry or computer science, and then you apply that to a specific vertical that you're interested in, like health. And I think that's really where innovation happens, is fusing things together and taking inspiration from some fields and applying them in other fields.
You nailed it. In fact, so look, your company right now is a result of a technology that came out of a different project, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
And so that's how it happens all the time. The Xerox Parks of the world, like we don't really know what to do with this graphics interface of the mouse, and meanwhile, Apple is running with it, right? And so that kind of stuff happens if you iterate often. You're just the byproduct is your waste is someone else's gold. And so I just like to be able to iterate quickly with this stuff. And so like the face recognition stuff I just showed you, I was amazed how open source. That's all. I actually just told that the system, the LLM, that might have been Droid. Hey, I have these images. identify faces and do facial recognition for me. And it just took the best open source to do that. It is really good. As I was working through it, I'm thinking, I have a number of pictures of me, but what if I every morning just took a picture of my face every day? I've seen in literature that your face composition can be correlated with health. So I'm thinking, wow, I'm getting health data. If I get face data, I'll then just say, okay, build a system to correlate the two and try to optimize food and exercise and sleep to improve health, and as a function of my face. And so it's all about the content and building the content stores. So that's kind of why I focused on that at this point. But just me saying what I just said, I mean, that's just like, that could be a multi-billion-dollar industry if you think about it. If someone could take a picture of their face and it just literally say, you're pre-diabetic. You might want to knock that sugar content down or get rid of the starch, That's preemptive to address what I think is going to be our fundamental issue as we move forward. And that's, as you think about the little one, you did biomedical engineering, right? But you're not doing that anymore. You're not doing anything bio right now.
Not at the moment, no.
But I think that's where the biggest societal call is. We have this population of people worldwide that are just aging more rapidly. The disease is occurring much sooner. It's just terrible. And it's largely because of diet and lack of exercise and sleep. It's the kind of the no-brainer things. We have to find ways to get people to be more preemptive, because otherwise, your child is not going to afford the cost of healthcare of my generation, and certainly not even yours. So it's something to really think about. That's this problem I wish the Zuckerbergs and the Musks and the Bezos would turn their attention to, because they have the resources to really start addressing these issues.
Yeah, actually, I think, in fact, Zuckerberg and the Chen and Zuckerberg Foundation, I think they are heavily leaning towards like health initiative, but I'm not sure exactly what projects they're working on. But I think you're onto something there. I think the general health is a big issue.
Well, let me ask.
I think there's so many ways to like help out there. But I think it always, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, it still has to do with productizing something and making it easy to use, right? If you have like an app where you need to take a picture every day, you need to remind yourself, that wouldn't work in my opinion, because people forget.
Well, no,
even with reminders.
Right. No, so that's a good point. I mean, you have to give them
But there's fun ways to integrate that. Like if Apple Health did that, and instead of like the face scan when you open your phone, that is already taking a face scan, you can just use the same data. Exactly. And you just need to implement it in a no-brainer way where you don't even know that you're doing it.
Yeah.
So and then you can train on that data, and then you can draw analysis. And if there's a more than, let's say, 5% or let's say 50% certainty that there is a big risk in something happening, then it alerts you. And it says like, hey, this is like serious. You got to go to the doctor.
Yeah. And so it's not unlike the symptom on the Oura Ring. With Jeremy the other day, he goes, so you might want to stay your distance because I had 2 symptom alerts or something, because we're in a warmer environment at that point. But it's funny because that's Oura Ring, not near as big as Apple. And you just nail it to open the face. In terms of an exit scenario, you build the algorithms, and that's an example that you build, well, they will come. Apple will just acquire you silently, and then you reach your wealth point. They're not going to do that themselves. They don't. It's too high risk. But to the point about Zuckerberg and his foundation, he's already got huge money. He doesn't need any more. He could tomorrow, as the controlling force on his platform, say, Facebook is no longer a social media. We're using it primarily for health. Okay, he might lose 10, 100 billion. I don't know. What's his net worth right now? He's still got a ton of money. Doesn't matter. Doesn't need to make any more money. But use it complete. You have to do a complete pivot. Not this little tiny hero funded 10, 100 million here. We're talking about billions of dollar platform, perhaps trillion, and just make it dedicated to this kind of, like, it's like the ozone layer as far as I'm concerned. We need to address that problem and do it quickly, because it's just our whole human species is at risk. It really is. And the solution isn't go to try to become interplanetary, Elon. It's actually solve it here at home. And so, yeah, that's my mini TED Talk. So I get kind of cranky, because if everything's about the dollar, it appreciates the measure of success, but I think you're hampered. You're not going to be real to go to that next level.
No, I think those are two different conversations. I still think you can build something really valuable in healthcare and help people and monetize that. I think that should still be allowed.
You think so?
Yeah, 100%. If you're saving people's lives, if you're making their life better, I think there should be incentive there to build it, not just because you're a good person. And I mean, that's why I didn't work, or I didn't want to study medical engineering and did my master's in that, because there's the big money in it. It was more of the curiosity-led approach to implementing science and engineering to help people. But here's why I'm not doing this anymore. And I think maybe that needs to be addressed as well. I built a few medical devices in grad school, and during COVID, me and the team, we built a 3D printable mask during the COVID shortage when everyone was running out of ventilators and respiratory masks. We actually ended up building something that is 3D printable with TPU, which is it formed to your face. You can take a scan of your face, and then it's like a perfect fit to your face. And we actually ended up winning this challenge in Germany, where we then got a design partner to distribute that with like $500,000 in manufacturing money. And that was really exciting because there was no limitations on like shipping a medical product. Yeah. But then when the supply chains got better, we learned that, you actually do need a CE certification. You need a FDA approval and all of this. Anything that gets in touch with the patient, you need certain certifications for that. And that's a huge turnoff for entrepreneurs, because the process that it currently works is you need to have a design locked in and probably already a vendor, like someone that manufactures this. And you need to write this big proposal. And if there already exists something that's similar, it's kind of fast tracked, but you still need to go through the paperwork and submit all of this, do all of the testing, and show that it's sufficiently similar to another product. And all of this is a big hamper to innovation because, like you said, you mentioned this already, I think 5 times, and AI Steve will correct me later, but you want to iterate quickly. And I think that's the number one key to iteration, to innovation, is the speed of iteration. And that's something that Elon preaches as well. But I think iterating quickly is the number one thing, where not the amount of failures or the amount of successes of your iterations. It's really the faster you fail, the faster you learn, the faster you ship, the faster you learn, the faster you get it in the hands of users, customers, paying or unpaying, that you learn something from it. And that's unfortunately, I think, too slow. And I think in order to speed up the innovation in healthcare, not only with drugs, where I also understand that we need clinical trials that needs to be handled really delicately and carefully, but just in general, being able to speed up the development cycles will not only make the innovation go faster, but it will also incentivize people that are curious, like you and me, to go into this space and innovate there, because they don't feel like they have to design something and then wait a year for the FDA approval and the clinical trials to come back. Anyway, this is just my rant on it's why I'm currently not working in biomedical engineering anymore.
Well, and so I don't know. I think I showed you one of my other projects called Drug to Table. And so one of the things as a chemist I learned many years ago in pharmaceutical companies is that they use nature to get the initial starting point. They do these natural product screenings and they get molecules that might be active. And then they basically optimize them chemically in a way so that they can monetize them, get a patent position. I heard this Gurley, he's a VC, who was on Tim Ferriss' podcast recently, and he said something that I totally love, because I see AI's off the charts because of open source. And he's the kind of guy who's like, you know what, that's where ideas have sex, hyper iteration and accelerate when you're open. Intellectual property, which ironically my dad was an IP guy, inhibit process because they carve out a 17 or 20 year, whatever it is, monopoly, where they actually stymie their own invention by doing that. But it's just so they can monetize because it's a big investment to come up with drugs. The reason I mention all this is that if you open source that, it'll be a game changer. And one way to open source that is put healthcare in people's hands. They shouldn't necessarily always just run to a doctor to script out a drug, when in fact that drug might have come from nature indirectly anyway. So the concept of finding bioactive molecules in nature, in your foods, is not that complicated because the drugs came from them anyway. And so one of the first things I showed, and I could publish it if I just put it on my website, that reishi mushrooms contain a molecule that's almost identical from a structural perspective to a statin, which is used to lower cholesterol. And so, will reishi mushrooms lower your cholesterol? I'm not going to make the medical claim, but you can maybe order some more reishi mushrooms if you like and get a sense. Do your blood panels go down? If you're on a statin, be careful because you might be double downing and lower your cholesterol too much, because statins actually lower both LDL and HDL. And you want your HDL to increase because that's a way to help pull the cholesterol waste back to the liver and so forth. The point is that nature is a repository of ideas that it iterated ridiculously fast over eons to solve problems. And we as scientists exploit that and try to monetize it. I'm saying let's just go back to it, put food in people's hands to address their own food as medicine, health and wellness. And suddenly I think we'll start to disrupt. It's kind of an open source strategy to disrupt how drug discovery and development is actually done. So that's kind of my reason for even doing it. A lot of my projects are just that. Just open up the idea and just get it out there and see if people run with it. My intent is not to make, I have a day job. I don't need to make the money in those projects. But you reach a certain point that money is not the driver in a lot of these things. It's just the curiosity and how can we help? How can we help pay it forward? That's my.
No, I agree with that. And I think that's why funding sciences for the sake of sciences is also really important, just because, like you probably know of the history of the transformer at Google, people didn't know that it would be what it is now, that the transformer really turned out to be the golden goose to large language models.
Yeah.
And that's why we had someone like Google open source it and allow everyone to use it. And if they hadn't done that, we would not have large language models, I think. And sometimes we don't know like the what ifs, but in those cases, I think for foundational building blocks for science or for technology, I think having that sense of community, of open sourcing or of sharing, even if you license it out and have people build on top of it, I think that's really valuable to humanity.
Yeah, I totally agree. Linux is a great example, open source. It empowers most of the machines out there. It's rock solid. I pick, I don't know, maybe you're a Microsoft person, but I'd pick Linux over, Azure systems in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
It ultimately just came from one very focused individual and building a community and open source and cycling. And yeah, people monetized along the way. Red Hat did and others. Think about MySQL. They basically gave that away and monetized with services, or maybe Oracle acquired them eventually. It's a Postgres thing. It's just when it's open like that, without charge, amazing things happen. So I don't know, that's the way I look at it. The day ChatGPT starts throwing ads at me, I'm done. I'm not even looking at it. It's going to really irritate me. They need to find other ways to keep their investors happy.
Yeah, and I'm actually really curious how they will build this from a product perspective, because I think everyone is very strongly against it. And especially with Gemini 3 being really strong on the chat interface now and the intelligence part, I think they have some really strong competition, which makes it way harder for them to now make their product worse with ads. And I'm really excited to see how they do this, because I don't think there's a good way for them to lose almost. And if they lose customers, if they lose users, it's not going to be good for them.
Well, they need to find a way to network affect it. And it's a very individual based product. It's like a fax machine, you minimally need two, right? And social media, you need people to interface and network effect off of. Chat interfaces are all just kind of, this is your portal and you're just talking to it. But if there's a way to network affect it, then money's just going to be shooting out left and right. I don't know. That's the way I think they should be thinking. But, it comes down again, who are you displacing, right? And you're displacing knowledge workers, right? With these kind of LLM systems. So there's going to be a big, very intelligent group of people that I think you can pull back into. And so maybe leverage B2B strategies through those workers. I just don't know. It's their problem. Trillion plus, at least 1.4 trillion of contracts they're going to have to fulfill. They better start making money pretty quickly. Otherwise, they're going to take the whole S&P 500 just right down. And that's when people get cranky, when their portfolios look a lot smaller, But you look, when I visit Lily and the beach party, I just got such a buzz. I felt so good afterwards because it's like just talking to folks like you in Silicon Valley just reminds me there's such a buzz there. You probably take it for granted. I live in Southern California. There's less buzz, but is that around every day for you? Do you notice it, or it's just background noise to you?
No, I think you still need to seek it out. I mean, at work, everyone that I work with is crazy smart, and I get to learn from them every single day. So I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. But in general, if you walk down the streets, you don't interact with people that much. And in terms of founder, I thought I would meet way more founders. And besides my friend group of founders, it's really hard to meet them because the founders that are true founders, they don't go to networking events. They build. They're out there with customers. They're shipping. They're selling. They're building. And I think that was a realization for me, is like going early to these networking events because I wanted to be around these people more. Is usually you just meet with people that are still looking for their co-founders, and those people aren't building yet because they're still looking for that right connection, the right idea, the right business model maybe. And that's why what I love going to is hackathons, and that's where that energy is super apparent. If there's I've been to a few hackathons in the city, and you have that electricity, you have like that builder mentality. You all get together, just everyone is curious, everyone wants to ship. And that's exciting. So
I've never been. How are they structured? You walk into a room and here's different things. Go for it. What whiteboards? What?
Yeah, it depends. It's usually sponsored by someone or something. So it's either, for example, there was this new startup that did like a modular LLM that made it really low code to build, like string different LLMs together in different tools. And they put out a hackathon and said, here's like a few prizes. Come and build with us. It will be 3 hours. We'll give you pizza and beer. And then we were maybe 100 of us, and 100 mostly engineers, a few product people, and then me as just person that likes to build and business person show up. And then we group together. You group up with 3 to 5 people usually, and then you just build. And then after 2 or 3 hours, you present your thing, and some people win, some people don't. But you see what other people built and the ideas they had with those tools. And that's cool. And then there's also all weekend hackathons that are a bit more extreme, where you meet all day, build, and then the next day you present. But I usually prefer like the one day or one evening, one afternoon like type of hackathons, just because you don't build anything that you're ready to ship. It's not a production database, but you have something that you can showcase. You have a building block. And then you have the people that go to all the hackathons, and they usually come prepared with something, and they already have that build. Yeah. But I'm not going there to compete. I'm going there to build, to get perspectives, to meet other people that are curious, to string ideas together into something usable.
Yeah, dude. I do a hackathon every day.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like now imagine like having like 3 other people in the room, and now you can divide up the work where you say, okay, so for just technology, it's a little bit harder. You can say you built this feature, I built this feature. Then you have to figure out how is it all compatible and stuff. Yeah. Which is, by the way, a great business idea, because this is a problem for big companies every single day. How do you make sure everything is compatible? And your shipment speed is way faster if you don't have to commit to Git every 5 minutes and make sure that the branches line up. But you could, for example, do one person does like the design of things, one person does the back end, person does the front end, one person does the integration, one person does the APIs, whatever, and one person does the business side of things, like what's the monetization, what's the pitch deck, what's the strategy, what's the presentation.
So just every one of those you described, I pretty much do anyway by having agents do them for me.
Yeah.
The difference is I'm just throwing design ideas. Look, I've had decades of ideas I wanted to implement on my shelf, and I just was limited resource in my own company to put developers on it. Unless I can make money on it, I'm certainly not going to put money into it. So doing the stuff that I'm doing that I showed you without having the constraint, which is what these hackathons seem to be, how to make money. Now, at the end, the company's sponsoring them. They're taking all these ideas and they're like, oh, you must have.
No. Like usually, there's usually one that's very quirky that wins, one that's funny that wins. It's not only the ones that make money. That's just usually the ones that I go with. It's usually where I'm like, where's there an actual problem? For example, one of the hackathons I went to, there was an app generator. A fart generator app that just generated different types of farts. And they won just because they were funny. They had a good design, good presentation, etc. So it's not only what makes money, but that's usually where I kind of see like what's an actual problem that needs to be solved that people would use a lot. And it doesn't have to be money, but that's kind of my framework. I like to kind of also deal with like image and video generation tools. Those are really fascinating to me. And I've seen them progress so hard this year. It's amazing. But I usually I'm driven towards what are my unique pain points? Where do I spend a lot of my time on? And I try to build systems around that. And that's usually what piques my curiosity. How can I be more productive on my own?
So, it's really cool. So the image stuff I was showing you, actually, a lot of those hits were images pulled frames out of videos. And so I have several videos that I can search similar images across videos, including faces. But as you think about it, a video is a strung together series of frames that each have a little bit of a mini story. But we as humans are storytellers. We learn, we communicate, we just work off stories. Videos are filled with stories. And so identifying how stories impact you, think about how like Netflix, they've monetized this concept by having sort of customized watch lists based on what you might have watched. And TikTok is all over this with the speed with which you spend on, a reel or something. Well, I mix technologies, but you know what I mean? It's like they've bitten into the dopamine aspect of what catches people with storytelling. But I think there's other things you can do with that. So have you thought a little bit about this? What you can do with videos, images, stories?
Totally. Like I've done some vibe coding of just AI slop generators that create stories on demand where you can pump out 100 videos in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It's almost still pretty expensive if you want to use the good looking stuff. But I think my key takeaway or my key thesis here, I usually like to come back to like, how am I thinking about it and why? And to me, I think video is the language of the internet and the next generation. I think the way that voice was the big progress when the telephone came out and then the landline and now the cell phone. And then it went more to text and static images with Instagram. And now there's the whole, what was the TikTok Vine came out. That was a big hit, but they hadn't figured out the unit economics yet. So they lost way too much money. But with TikTok, we just see so much content being consumed these days. And a lot of that is just entertainment. But with YouTube, I'm very, very bullish on YouTube. And that's why I post some videos on there, is because I think it's a library of knowledge and you're able to tell more. You're probably better off to search it with LLMs or with Google search. But you're able to tell like a story. It's easier to digest. It's easier to consume because you have sound, you have motion pictures, you have a storyline, you have a two-dimensional timeline. And I think that's really what makes it the language of the internet. And that's why I'm so curious to learn more about how do we tell stories on the internet. And I think videos is the way to go. And I think that's not going to go away. I've tried some VR stuff that could be the next generation, but I think video is here to stay no matter what. And I'm really, really bullish on this for so many reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, obviously Meta missed it with their gogs, and they're finally getting it with the Ray-Ban kind of concepts where they can at least passively. As soon as they start talking HUD displays and stuff, that's not good. You just want to be able, as far as I'm concerned, it's a capture device. I don't like having Bluetooth even enabled stuff on my head, right? But having the capture of content to me is like another source I was talking about with AI Steve. I'd love to have that. What I see throughout the day and how I interact with my environment, because for me, I'm always thinking about how I can feel good for as long as possible, right? It's about wellness and optimizing, just feeling good. And so if there's days that I'm maybe down or less energetic, I want to understand what caused that. And it could be lack of sleep, or what's causing lack of sleep. Well, it could be what I experience. And I know for a fact when I do my music in the studio, I've seen this from my own Apple Health data, between the sound, the lows hitting me in the gut, and mediums and highs, and me as a drummer moving. I wear glue blockers so I don't have the light as much, but that gets me to sleep very soundly, great REM cycle sleep. And I feel so much better the next day. You couple that with like the right food, I will do that every single day. I'll do the same exact thing every single day if I find that optimal level of feeling throughout the day. Some people like the variety. I don't. Some people like the seasons. I don't. I just want to feel good 24/7. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is trying to find strategies to take content coming in so I can do the analysis and optimize. I don't know if other people do that, but if they were able to do that in a passive way, do you think it'd be of interest to them? You think? If they have like red light, green light suggestions for what to eat or not, based on maybe what they're wearing on their goggles or sunglasses, and it could be 2 or 3 days later, you think that would be something that'd be engaging?
I would have to think about that. The answer is that I don't know. I think it depends on the use case and the benefit that you get out of it. I think the strongest use case for all of this is still just entertainment. People want to be distracted. People want to get their mind off of the stresses of the day. And that's why people watch TV and watch sports, and including myself. That's why we watch YouTube. That's why we consume content. It's usually a lot of us are maybe too busy with their thoughts, and consuming something is way easier than just being with your thoughts for just 10 minutes. And unless we really are trained with meditation to do that, usually that's more entertaining to people and you get more dopamine hits.
Yeah,
but I think that's really why Meta and the VR is really focusing on entertainment and social media, just because it's the dopamine. But I see the potential benefits of what you're talking about.
Yeah, so you as a younger generation have a huge opportunity, because the baby boomers, I mean, they're already kind of aging. They're trying to hold on, but they're aging. And so I'm the Gen X, and we're smaller, but the boomers are going to be this large population of people who really need to have entertainment, because a lot of them are like passing on their wealth to the next generation. But at the same time, they're not going to be in the day-to-day, go-to-go fury. And it might not be a technology on a screen. You see like these meetups, I think for seniors might actually become important to kind of get back. I see meetups as microbiome exchange, but that's all. I'm just looking from a scientific perspective. I mean, the reality is that stuff is going to be big. And so it already is big. If it involves a screen and a handheld or a set of goggles, I have a feeling it's going to be a little more challenging to tap into that aging population. So it's got to be high tech hidden as high tech is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. And I think this comes back down to our conversation earlier with how do you productize something effectively, and how do you make it feel less like a product and more like a habit? How do you make them choose something over something else? And I think habit is a really important thing in all of our lives. It's really what drives us. It's our autopilot, if you want to call it that. But some people are just, when they come home, they turn on the TV and sit down with a pizza, whatever. And other people, they go work out or play with their kids. And I think how do you productize something to become a habit is a really interesting challenge. And this is where kind of the idea where you were mentioning like the app, like take a picture of your face every single day. How do you make it seamless? And how do you make it just part of your daily routine, no matter what your routine is?
Yeah, you have a great mind to immediately spot, well, that's an opportunity to unlock on your screen, on your phone, because you literally do that every day.
Yeah. And you can do that multiple times a day too, right? Like if that is important data.
If you're wearing any kind of Apple Health integrated device, you can already see that is just, there's a there on that one. I don't know, something like we actually chat about a bunch of stuff, and I'd go forever with you. I know you have your little one, you're on the East Coast, it's later. It's fun. I love talking with folks that are as driven as you. It's great. I mean, you are so driven. I love it. Well educated. You've been in more companies than some people who are my age.
Yeah, that can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing, right? Some people look for a lot of experience with one company. Other people, especially on the startup and entrepreneur side, I'm very blessed that I've seen a lot of perspectives. And I think that's one of my core strengths is really that I've seen different company dynamics from founder level to technology to market access and revenue generations. Like being able to mix and match these ideas and seeing what worked and what doesn't work is really valuable, that I use every day almost, where I kind of think back of like what worked and what didn't work. But I also see the value in just being with a few projects for a long time, because knowledge and company and what you build compounds over time. And if you switch companies constantly, that you don't really get the value of that. But anyways, two-edged sword.
No, when you continue with your hobbies is my only recommendation, especially without a focus on monetization. It was a Mr. Beast who was saying like he kept making videos for like literally 10 years until it finally clicked. And you just have to enjoy it. You need it to be a hobby where it's not something that is paying the bills, right? The way I delineate it, right? If you're doing something for money, it's work, right? If you have to pay money to do something, it's a hobby, right? And as soon as I force a hobby to become work, it seems like it dulls my interest a little bit because it's work, right? But a hobby, I can be perpetually open-ended, curious, constantly pushing, doing some really cool things. So that's my only recommendation to you, is try to continue to build your hobby base, because as you age, and you'll reach, you're probably already at that point, but reach a point where it doesn't matter. You'll get to a point where you will not spend the last dollar you made or whatever that phrase is. It's just at a certain point, you'll have enough money. And it's about the money thing. At 29, it's a little different because you have decades and decades of life ahead of you. And you have a child. Are you
Still building a family, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough to say. I mean, it's so funny because I heard similar things when I was a kid as well. And I'm like, I just want to buy a house, damn it.
Yeah.
But look, it's you get to a point that, your needs, some people have the needs, they want to have a private jet. That need. I hate traveling. I travel 1 million miles on United. I have zero interest in traveling, right? I want to bring it close to me. Even my music studio, I don't even want to do gigs. I have people come to my music studio. So it's like, you get to a point where you just like, money isn't the issue, because you adapt your needs to work within the confinement of your net worth. But the thing again is like, keep the hobbies going, because my biggest concern for anyone as they get older is if they don't have a huge portfolio of hobbies, their demise is going to be very rapid. And so it's never going to be an issue with you. I can already tell.
No, as you might have heard from Jeremy, we have a lot of water sports hobbies, to food, to travel, and coming back to one of my core values is curiosity. I feel like if you stay curious, you'll never be bored. And I see that in you as well. I feel like you could probably live 10 lifetimes and not run out of things to do.
Oh, I've got so many things that I want to do especially AI enabled stuff. It's like,
so before we wrap up, then I think that's a really good closing question that I wanted to ask you from the beginning of this call. And that is, it's been easier than ever to build anything and to really become an expert or learn about anything. How do you pick your projects? How do you know what you want to work on that day?
Oh, man.
And long term too, right? Because not just what you choose to do right now, but also what you want to build over a long period to have that knowledge and product compound.
It's interesting because I showed you that example, the Apple Health thing. I wrote that on my to-do calendar about a week ago. I thought, that'd be kind of a cool idea, right? What I'm actually starting to get worried about now is that I'm like a week ahead. And I'm worried that I'll get to the point where it's just like, I wake up one morning and go, I don't have any to-do ideas. That's kind of a mini fear of mine, but it hasn't happened. Always just, amidst a project, that's going to be a cool thing. And I add it as a to-do list down the road. So ideas to me, they just come. I've had so many interactions with different disciplines, from chemistry and biology and computer science and COVID. I actually have a post on COVID that said, expect in a few years that we're going to have like a new renaissance. That's why I named my podcast Renaissance Circle, because it was just putting people in this situation where they got to a point where there's so much necessity it's going to force massive innovation. And you are a perfect example. You 3D mask, right? Really quickly. So I just encourage for me to say to you, just all these ideas that might seem harebrained, just write them down, to them, put them on a calendar somewhere, because you might get to a point where you have the free time to actually embark on those. I don't have a laundry list that's really big right now. It's actually getting pruned down because I'm crushing through a ton of the things I've wanted to do that have been pent up for years. So I'm just hoping that they keep coming in terms of ideas.
Lovely. Love to hear that. No, it's I think that's one of my issues. It's just my to-do list keeps getting longer, so I have to cut things off. And
there'll be a point where you're going to crush through those so fast. It's going to be like, it was last in, first out. I don't know, FIFO, first in, first out, whatever it is going to be. It's going to disappear quickly, and it'll be like this funnel draining. You're going to go, oh shit, I got to add some more in this. Because implementation is not the challenge anymore. It's from the beginning. It's knowing what to build and what's interesting to put energy and time into. And if it's money for the moment, right, drive that as the what to build. There will come as a point in your life, I think, that it's going to be building just because it's the right thing to do. I mean, I had a couple of friends pass. I felt one of the biggest projects, most intense projects I had. I built this toast app for a pal who had passed an stent pancreatic cancer, and I got it built before he passed, and people were putting toasts in so he could read the toasts while alive. And that, to me, it was like almost life's work. It felt so good. And I realized, no. And I wound up actually doing it like 2 or 3 more times because it was for other friends who passed. But rarely do we live in a society where people say good things about people. They're always saying negative stuff, and viral, if it bleeds, it leads. But I saw this as an opportunity to start cherishing the people that you interact with daily. And it meant something to me. And I literally spent like 24 hours building that. I mean, I almost didn't sleep. And that was all AI. So, but I mean, those kinds of things, I think they'll come. And I probably didn't answer your question, but I just know that there's so many things I would love to do that I touch on some of the things I've done already in the last year on my website. But there's so many more I want to do. So I'm hoping there's like 8 billion people on the planet like me that have that same kind of desire. And it's just not knowing how to build stuff historically has stopped them. Now you're enabled.
yeah,
And that's just it's the most, I've said the LLMs AI of today, it's like fire to human beings. It literally can transform our species. And it'll be up to people like you and me to actually keep banging the drum a little, showing examples of how it's done. I banged the drum a lot in the 80s and 90s and no one listened. Now a lot of people are listening. And a lot of different backgrounds are coming together. And that's the secret sauce. Like content is king. Bring people together and just amazing shit happen.
amazing. I love that. I think that's a good place to wrap it.